Olá pessoal, eu estou tendo novamente o privilégio de estar ao lado do meu amigo Geoff Newton, um psiquiatra inglês que vive já há algum tempo em São Paulo, e ele, com toda a sua experiência, tem muitas coisas importantes para compartilhar com a gente. Esse, portanto, é mais um vídeo e nesse momento focado numa das coisas mais importantes que nós temos que refletir na vida. Nós estamos nos tornando aí uma sociedade bastante complexa, cheia de demandas, cheia de oportunidades e também cheia de desafios. Mas estamos esquecendo para trás uma pessoa muito importante. E essa pessoa muito importante, segundo meu amigo Geoff, é a criança, o menino ou a menina que nós temos em nosso interior. O Geoff vai conversar aqui com vocês para falar sobre o resgate da nossa criança interior. Quais são os benefícios de nós preservarmos e trazermos para fora a criança interior que nós devemos preservar dentro de nós, se queremos ser mais felizes, se queremos brincar mais, se queremos viver mais, se queremos ter mais amizades. Acompanhe essa nossa conversa, que ela tem bastante coisas que podem ajudar a trazer para fora a criança interior. Geoff, we were talking about how important it is for the human being to restore the child that we have inside. What's that important for? Yeah.
I think the importance to restore the inner child is, first and foremost, I think, to keep it kind of simple, is if we don't allow our inner child to come out, we tend to lack joy and fun. Most people that are parents today, or have been parents with little children, will recognise the child comes out naturally. And that depends a lot on what's happened to the person's childhood. If the child's had, as my childhood wasn't particularly secure or happy, I have trouble letting my child out. I'm kind of more serious and more deep than maybe some others. So that's kind of how it works, keeping it simple. So what I've learnt to do is bring my child out when it's safe, because my child's a little reckless. I was a little reckless. So I think the importance of, first of all, letting my child out, having a look at the child within, and then restoring it to accept it and to tweak it, to allow it to be less reckless and more safe, is very important. Very important for joy, for happiness, for ourselves and people around us. I think, can the inner child be killed off totally? I think some people with a tremendous amount of trauma to the child can repress the child to the point where it's very difficult to find it. I worked with children in schools for nearly 5 years, and I can see a lot of damage done by families and adults to the inner child. But to kill it off totally, I would argue, maybe not. To find it, because it's deeply repressed, would be very difficult. But I don't believe impossible. I believe there's some wonderful child therapists out there, play therapy, art therapy. These kind of therapies really work very well with children. So I believe as adults, if we work with a child therapist, with art therapy, play therapy, psychodrama, I believe that the inner child can be released. But you know, it's quite a difficult task. It's quite a difficult.
Geoff, how do children perceive the adult world?
I think that's a really good question, because I think children are being asked to be more and more involved in the adult world earlier and earlier. I think the days of us being able to have an extended childhood are becoming less and less. The pressures of society to perform, the careers that are available are becoming less and less. We're asking our children to do more and more. So I think that's a really good question. How do they perceive it? I think with difficulty. Working with children, the one thing I was aware of was that children do not understand how they feel. They feel, but they don't understand. They don't put words to feelings. The reason we use psychodrama, play, psycho art, and things like that is to teach a child adult ways of interacting with how they feel. So they perceive it, I think, with a certain amount of doubt. I remember a quote by one of the famous therapists, I think it was Bowlby, I'm not sure. He said, when a child looks into the garden and sees a bird, the child says, look, Dad, there's a bird. And then Dad tells the child the name of the bird, and then that changes the child's dynamic. That changes the child's view. It's no longer a bird. The child then wants to know the names of the other birds. So it doesn't just accept nature.
Geoff, how do we let our inner child out?
I think we do it in a number of ways. I think socially, when we've worked very, very hard doing the adult stuff, doing the stuff that we're made to do to earn money, to careers. A lot of us go, when we're younger, to nightclubs, and we dance and we laugh and we drink and we have fun. I think that's a safe environment to let the inner child out. The child that dances, the adult that dances is actually in touch with his child more often than not. That's why I love Brazil. The problem is we're being asked to be the adult more and more, and the adult and parent. So have we got time to let the inner child out? I think it's difficult today, but it's not impossible. I think we need to find ways to let it out, and let it out and have fun. Go to the beach, play football, do sports. You know, many of these things. I think we've got to find what fits with us to let out the inner child, because the inner child needs to have fun. If we don't have fun, we're not holistically balanced people. It is so important. But you've got to find your way. That's the most important thing.
Another question for you, my friend Geoff. What if the child's home was not secure?
Okay, if the child's home was not secure, that would suggest that there was some kind of trauma. Now, Freud talked about this quite a lot. A trauma childhood can cause repression. What that means is, if we had a child that was traumatized, we tend to repress the inner child. We put it in a place of safety. It's a mechanism we use. And like I said earlier, that tends to mean that we probably don't have as much fun as we could, because we're scared to let out our inner child out. You know, working again with therapy, some people do it on their own, but I would always warn against that. Keep yourself safe. What we've got to do is kind of learn to self-heal through the use of therapy or guidance. And then what we can do is the repressed child can come out. We can nurture that child, learn to express the trauma, and then we can bring out the happy child, the child that wants to have fun, the child that then allows it, the adult allows the inner child to have fun. Then we can kind of have more joy in life. So this is all, the message is, this is all very doable. It's okay to think about letting the child out. If we had traumatic or unhealthy childhoods, it takes work, but the good news is, yes, it can be done. So the damage can be repaired. I think it's important, first of all, we recognise that we are all of our experiences. So everything we've done throughout our life are inside of our mind. So from the 5-year-old child up until the teenage child, very much inside of us. I think the best way to learn to bring the child into adult life when it's appropriate, of course it's probably not at work, but in free time, is to actually ask the child within us questions. You know, create a dialogue with the inner child. I think probably the safest way to do it is to find the happy memories.
Geoff, as parents, how do I give our children the gift of a healthy child?
I think there's a number of factors. I think the most important, if you know, we recognise that bringing up children is not an exact art, and most of us don't get it absolutely right because it's so difficult, and every child is an individual, so it's fraught with difficulties. But I think the biggest factor, but by no means the only factor, is love. If two parents can give their children a loving, and the second one, autonomous childhood. And when we say about a child having autonomy, that means free will. That doesn't mean letting a child do exactly what it wants, because a child needs love, autonomy, and boundaries. Boundaries are so important, they balance the free will. If you have a child with free will and no boundaries, the child just thinks it can do whatever it wants, grows up into an adult that thinks it can do whatever it wants, and then realizes there's laws and there's work and we need to pay bills, and these are the boundaries of our adult life. So we're teaching our children to have boundaries which will help them later on. So without, this is like a three-legged stool. You've got to have love, boundaries and autonomy. If one of the legs on the stool is not strong, the stool will fall over. So we need that stool to be strong. They, for me, are the three most important elements we can gift our child, our children. And if you think about that, and we didn't get that as adults, to give the child the autonomy when it's safe to do so, to let it have fun, let it out, let it scream and shout and run into the water at the beach and kick the ball around and do whatever, and we can do that with our children. But also remembering that we live in a society where we have to be boundary. So we have to respect others, we have to kind of be aware of others. And that for me is the three most important ingredients in the life in life about bringing up children. Also, I think children naturally push back against boundaries. So what I think we need to be aware of as well is that we need one or two strong adults that keep boundaries in place. Even when it's easier to give in, I think it's very important we try not to give in. We try to keep them very strong. If we can create them three things, I think we've got a fairly good chance of bringing up pretty secure children that grow into adults that are very in touch with their childhood. But you know, it's a thankless task and it's very, very difficult. And like I said, I don't know anybody that gets that completely right, but we just do our best because we're humans.